I live in Hartford.
and I teach in a public school. I am also a union member. Without a doubt, this is a critical moment for people who need to work in order to live. After living through one of the greatest crises and disruptions in our lives, we are entering into at least two more. Last Wednesday, May 20th, 2020, Governor Ned Lamont joined President Donald Trump and governors throughout the United States in a campaign to begin rolling back some of the few measures in place meant to slow the speed of COVID-19 in this country. Working people have spent more than 2 months doing our best to slow this plague, and the people in power have done almost nothing to prepare for its end. When the pandemic hit this country, hospitals were already running on bare-bones supplies, doctors' visits had been stripped down to a handful of minutes, and 60,000 people were already dying every year for want of health coverage. Fundamentally, we all knew these were the conditions in this country. But when the pandemic hit here, we also learned that the rot went much further. Everywhere, people in positions of authority denied the crisis, delayed action, failed to act even remotely appropriately, and even sabotaged attempts to mitigate the pandemic.
To be sure, Trump was
And is the most visibly and grotesquely at war with reality. It is hard to beat a man who advocates cleaning people's lungs out with bleach. But it turns out that Trump is just in the lead.
everywhere. Working people have had to fight tooth and nail for PPE, for social distancing measures,
To close their workplaces, and even to get sick leave in the middle of a pandemic.
while managers
Locked themselves in their offices or even went home, they sent workers to work in hotels without even gloves, quote, because they look unprofessional.
before workplaces were closed by
By the state, workers were already walking out. Before governors were closing down schools, parents were keeping their kids home,
some teachers were even organizing.
organizing sick-outs.
100,000 people died here in the last 75 days.
Because the people who give orders in this country waited months before taking any kind of action, and then they did very little.
If those who actually do
The work had not acted on their own, that count would be much higher already.
the death toll is a product of
Decisions made at every level of authority.
prisons are some of the
Biggest incubators of COVID-19 here in Connecticut. Governor Lamont has refused to release anyone early from their prison sentences.
all around the world. Governments are
Releasing people from prison to protect the incarcerated and the society at large. Meanwhile, Governor Lamont cannot identify a single person,
not one who he thinks should be released, not even to protect staff and everyone else who
they and their families come into contact with.
no one is making Lamont keep thousands of people in
Prison and jail through a pandemic. Nor is anyone making him keep military production at Electric Boat running, or at Sikorsky, or at Pratt & Whitney, or at many smaller shops around the state.
Lamont is responsible for keeping construction
Of luxury homes going throughout this whole crisis, requiring workers to crowd into service elevators and share porta potties just so developers can drive up housing prices and push more people with less money out of their own neighborhoods.
all of these decisions.
And many more were made by people in positions of authority in this state with the knowledge that they would result in many deaths.
For them, these calculations
A
are
routine.
just as they know that some
2,000 to 3,000 people will die every year from workplace accidents, and another 20,000 to 30,000 will die from workplace illnesses.
just as Cuomo knows the consequences.
Consequences of cutting Medicaid in the middle of a pandemic.
The fact that these policies
Would hit people of color the hardest.
was most certainly part of their calculation. Trump and Lamont and both of their parties know too that rolling back the
Few measures taken to curb the pandemic
will cause more people to die. Trump's own administration has
calculated these increases.
and every day new
Information comes out about how unprepared Connecticut is for any further rollback of social distancing.
Lamont says there's enough PPE, but now nursing home workers
Workers are told they cannot give residents showers because it will use too much PPE.
So how then is there enough PPE? Lamont says he has set up a robust testing and tracing apparatus,
Apparatus but now his own officials say there isn't enough staff or training.
Even from the start, Lamont used
The lowest available estimates for how much testing would be needed to safely roll back distancing measures.
most experts estimated
That we would need between 5 and 50 times as many tests per week as Lamont organized the state for at the beginning of this
rollback, and half as much as half as many more times as he's projecting
for upcoming weeks.
The state representative in my district, Matt Ritter, has not said one word in public
to oppose Lamont's pandemic
policies. He does not call for the release of
prisoners. He does not call for the closure of or conversion of military manufacturing. He does not call for a pause in luxury home construction.
He does not call for more
Testing or a lower infection rate before workers are told they have to go back to work in restaurants, shopping malls, and salons.
His online accounts are
Merely promotional vehicles for the Lamont administration.
once again, the parties of big
Business are ready to sacrifice the lives of working people to rescue the profits of a few rich people.
once again, people of color, immigrants, and women are the main objects.
Of this sacrifice.
The vast majority of working
People oppose this rollback, and poll after poll shows this.
the reality of life after such rollbacks
Shows this too. Working people still refuse to go shopping like they're told to. They know that even the customers are not safe, let alone the workers who were stuck there all day.
working people have sacrificed.
Enough for the mistakes and for the enrichment of the wealthy.
If workers are
Taking risks and making the sacrifices, then the workers should decide when to go back to work, under what conditions, and for what purpose.
the rollback of social distancing
Measures does not merely mean more infection.
it also means an end
To the financial measures keeping people from abject poverty.
In Ohio, the state is already telling employers to report people
Who miss work without special exemptions so they can be removed from unemployment rolls. In Connecticut, Lamont and reporting in the Current make it clear that the reopening of the economy means that workers in reopened sectors will now be eligible for termination with cause should they not report to their work at restaurants, malls, salons, and so on.
In Texas, the state Supreme
Supreme Court has reopened evictions and debt collection, as has the state of Virginia,
including
garnishment of wages,
in New Orleans, striking workers are
replaced with prison labor.
in a period where some 39
9 million people have applied for unemployment, and some 4 in 10 have not received it.
where food lines are growing
Everywhere, these are barbaric measures.
But this is what millionaire businessmen like Lamont
Mean
when they talk about quote-unquote reopening the economy. For them, the economy means other people producing more value
value for rich people than it takes to keep them alive and compliant.
for people like Lamont and Trump and Matt Ritter. The economy means the conditions under which people will
Voluntarily do this kind of work, where people
will beg to do this kind of work. This is why the other day,
Senior White House economic advisor Kevin Hassett said the economy is looking good because, quote, our human capital stock is ready to get back to work.
they think of us as human capital stock, their human capital stock. For them, everything that allows them to
Treat us as such is natural and good.
And this tells us what is coming next.
An
Assault on the working class.
unlike one we have ever seen in our lives.
For the owners of banks, corporations,
And big property, the crisis is not that millions of people are struggling to eat, or that
millions are threatened
with homelessness. It is that their profits are endangered.
They intend to save their profits. That means getting people to work as hard as possible.
For as little as possible.
That is why keeping people in prison is so
So important for Lamont and his party.
For about 45,000 people on probation
Probation and parole in Connecticut, the threat of jail time can be used to make some very productive complaint-free workers.
releasing people from prison who were there on a technicality.
Removes that threat.
The debts that come out of this crisis,
The threats of hunger and homelessness will be used as a cudgel to get people working hard, long, flexible, precarious hours for little pay.
As more people are sent back to work while schools are closed, many will have to stay home to take care of their kids, losing work and income while unemployment and other supports are removed. This will largely affect women, making them more vulnerable and a more vulnerable part of the workforce. The Democrats and Republicans both intend to use this crisis of public budgets as a pretext to cut public sector wages, lay off thousands, and to cut and privatize essential services. The people who risked and sacrificed the most in this pandemic, elder care workers, medical workers, grocery store workers, servers, retail workers, manufacturing workers, construction workers, the elderly, and all of their family and friends, Lamont and Ritter and the Democrats and Republicans are already planning on cutting their services to pay for this crisis. They are already planning on evicting their family and friends. Is this necessary or inevitable? Most of these workers pay about 12% of their income in state and local taxes. The richest 1% of residents here pay about 8% of their income. If the richest residents in Connecticut simply paid the same percentage of their income as the poorest residents, the same people everyone is thanking up and down for their heroism, there would be no budget crisis. The state might not even need to keep handing the rich a tiny profit for the privilege of borrowing their money. It could be taxing. This is not even to mention the incredible wealth appropriated by big business in this state that goes untaxed. There is enough wealth in this state and in this country to pay for all the basic needs working people have and more, even with this crisis. Manufacturing shops can be retooled to make medical supplies, PPE, and testing equipment, and then retooled again to make a transition to 100% renewable power. A single-payer public health plan could not only provide health care for all in this state, it could cut costs in half. Food can be made available for free for all who need it. Renting costs could be based on maintenance rather than market rates, and then subsidized by the state at very low cost for those who need it. No one needs to be evicted, no one needs to be homeless. There is already plenty of housing for everyone. But Lamont has already made it clear that he is more interested in taxing groceries than taxing the wealthy or their businesses. And single-payer health care is never on the table. And his party plans to expand frack gas use of frack gas rather than renewable power. And driving up housing costs is so essential for them that they continue construction of luxury housing during a pandemic. And I know what some of you, maybe all of you, are thinking. We can't tax the rich. We can't tax them as much as everyone else. They'll leave. If true, it is worth pausing to consider what that says about the rich. And there is a half-truth here. It is this. Lamont and Ritter cannot tell the ultra-rich what to do. Really, it works the other way around. Lamont and Ritter work for the ultra-rich. If the ultra-rich don't want to pay more taxes, Lamont, Ritter, and the entire Democratic and Republican parties combined cannot and will not make them. But just because Lamont and Ritter are not going to force the rich to do anything they don't want to do, doesn't mean no one can. Their power is not limitless. No matter how much money the rich have, working people have even more when they put their hands in their pockets with purpose. Money of the wealthy is useless if they can't get anyone to work for them. When the people who actually run the society stop doing what they're told, the rich become powerless. So, will the rich pay a little more just to calm down that kind of situation, should it start to develop? They probably will. What does it mean to create that kind of situation? First of all, it means we stop trying to convince the Lamonts and Ritters to do the right thing. It means we start organizing on our own to win what is necessary. This is why we need movements of working and oppressed people that are independent of the employers and their parties. There is an alternative future where people get what they need to live and where we take real measures against this plague. The recent fight against the boss's pandemic policy suggests that this fight is possible. as do the recent mass international actions for women's liberation, as do the titanic struggles in recent months throughout the world, from Chile to Puerto Rico to Haiti to India, as do the recent struggles led by teachers, as do the rebellions against police brutality in this country, going for 6 years now, coming to life again in Minneapolis. But this alternative will only be possible if working and oppressed people can get together and fight with their own strength, independent from the parties of their bosses, and we will never be able to wage an independent fight if we are not also organized politically, if we are not organized with the intent to take power in our own name. We will always feel the need to go begging to one of our boss's parties in the end. If we do not, we will always end up playing by their rules. Today, I am announcing my candidacy for the Connecticut House of Representatives in the 1st District. I am running as a Socialist Resurgence candidate. Our campaign will strive to expose the boss's parties, to show the alternatives, to show how working people can win when they unite across all sectors and fight independently from their employers, to help build the fight back against the coming attacks on workers, and to show that working people should run this society. And that is why today I am joining Unidad Latina en Acción at the state capitol to demand an emergency fund for undocumented workers who have been excluded from all emergency assistance during the pandemic. Join us. It's going to be 3 o'clock. The people will be showing up earlier at the state capitol this afternoon, Thursday, May 28th. An injury to one is an injury to all. If we are to win what we need, we must fight for each other. Everyone should join this essential fight at the Capitol this afternoon at 3 p.m. If you are interested in learning more about my party, Socialist Resurgence, please look us up online at socialistresurgence.org and on Facebook. We have both a local and a national Facebook page. If you're interested in getting involved in the campaign or in the party, please contact us. You can do so right through Facebook, or you can also find contact info on the website as well. More social media will be coming soon. Thank you very much. Have a great morning and afternoon, and I'll see you at the state capitol.